Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Bill Sopcich. I know you guys know me, but for anybody who's going to listen to this afterwards, they may not. Here at the Sopcich Natural Health and Wellness Center, and today is our fourth, what is this, Wednesday? Fourth Wednesday of the month, which we're doing Dr. Bill and Friends. Lindsey Sadowski is our friend this week, and Lindsey does some amazing work. She worked with us for about 4 years and then went out on her own, and she's doing a smash-up job where she's at. She has a certification in neuroemotional technique, and she does a great job with it. I mean, that's who we send people to when anybody's got issues with neuroemotional stuff. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let you start talking, Lindsey. Tell people a little bit about yourself, maybe what got you there, and then we'll just banter back and forth. And if anybody has questions as we go, feel free to ask a question, and we'll go from there. So without further ado, Lindsey.
All right, thanks, Doc. How's everybody doing? Thanks for having me tonight. I really appreciate it. So we're going to talk tonight about what neuro-emotional technique is, or we say NET for short. But before I get into all of that, I always have to give a big thanks to Dr. Sopcich because he is the angel that introduced me to this technique. My background is actually in sports medicine. That's where I was at in my career about 10 years ago, and went through some pretty traumatic events personally, with some children passing away and just dealing with a lot of different things, negative things that happened in that culture. And I was really kind of praying for something different in my life. Even though I love sports medicine, I also wanted something different. And it was through Dr. Sopcich's sister. I was taking care of his nieces and nephews. They were the athletes at the school I was working at. And she kept saying to me, "You got to meet my brother. He's a chiropractor." And I'm like, what do I need to meet a chiropractor for? And she kept saying this to me for years, actually. And then one day I ran into her again, and she goes, "No, I'm serious. You really need to meet my brother." So she gave me his number, and I always talk about how it was the most awkward conversation because I'm like, "Hi, Dr. Bill. Your sister Tammy wants me to call you to talk about these lasers for these kids, these athletes." And he's like, "Yeah, come on in. We'll talk about it. We'll show them to you." And the next thing you know, him and I are having a conversation about sports medicine and that he'd like to open up a branch in his office. And little did we even talk about the lasers that day. I don't even think they came up. But the next thing you know, Dr. Bill and I started a partnership together, and I started working at the office primarily doing sports medicine. And then, he introduced me. He was going through the NET process himself. And he said, "I think this is something that you would be really good at, especially since going through a lot of the trauma and you doing some work on yourself." So that's how this all got started, was through Dr. Bill. He was the one that introduced me to this. So I am forever grateful because this has not only helped me heal a lot of my own personal trauma, but it's given me the gift to help many others through their personal traumas in their life. So going into a little bit about what NET is simply it's a stress reduction technique. And there's a lot of technical stuff behind it, but if we're really going to put it simply, it's just a stress reduction technique. And I don't think any person is exempt from stress, especially right now in life. There is so much going on in our life, as we all know. And that stress can be anywhere from something more physical, or it could be some type of physiological issue. It really doesn't matter what the stress is. And it also doesn't matter the severity of the stress. It could be something really big, like a car accident or a loved one passing away suddenly, or it could be something smaller, like you sprained an ankle or you failed a test. So in here, and when we do NET, the severity, it doesn't matter whatsoever, because a stress is a stress. And if it's creating some type of physical pain in your body or some type of physiological effect, like not being able to go to sleep at night or staying asleep, or not being able to lose or gain weight, or having panic or anxiety attacks, those are all physiological signs of stress. So what we do is we use this process called, again, neuroemotional technique, or NET. And what it does is it uses a combination of these acupressure points that are right here. They're located on the wrist and hands. And we also use a combination of manual muscle testing. So if a lot of you go to Dr. Bill, you see that he uses the manual muscle testing where he's pressing on you. So I always kind of give the explanation because sometimes, people have a hard time understanding the concept of muscle testing, or, they think it's this voodoo magic thing that we do. And I really want to be certain that there is a lot of evidence behind it. It's applied kinesiology. In sports medicine, I was doing a version of manual muscle testing. It's just a little bit different than what we do in the office. So when I was more in sports medicine, let's say an athlete came into me because, let's say they hurt their bicep up here. Part of my evaluation on that athlete would be manual muscle testing. And what I would be doing is kind of pushing and pulling on that arm to see, how far can they flex up? How far can they extend? Do they have any pain when doing so? And then I grade that on a scale from 1 to 5, okay? And that would tell me something. That's one form of manual muscle testing. But the type that Dr. Sopcich and I do is functional manual muscle testing. And it's going to be where you put a straight locked out arm, all right? And it doesn't have to be all of your strength either, just a nice straight locked out arm. And we apply a pressure here at the end of the wrist. While doing so, I'm going to be asking you some questions, and your brain is going to respond through a reflex. And that reflex is either going to show a congruency where it's going to stay strong, or it's going to drop down and it's going to show an incongruency, okay? So when we do NET, we're using, again, the combination of these acupressure points plus the manual muscle testing. So I describe the manual muscle testing for me as like, it's my driver. It helps me to kind of narrow down what point are we located on. And then from there, that point runs on meridians. And meridians are these little energy channels. The ones that I specifically use come up the arm and they come down into your organs. So people really don't realize that our emotions are housed in our organs. A lot of people think that they're up here in our brain, which they process up through our brain, but they're actually housed in our organs. So some of the most common ones that people come in with are feelings of anger and irritation and frustration and resentment. Those emotions tend to be held either in the liver or the gallbladder meridian. People that are very nervous, they're anxious, they're worriers, that tends to be held in your stomach or your spleen or your pancreas. So again, the muscle testing is my driver. I can narrow down exactly what emotion is trapped in your system. And then we use this process to release that from your system so that you're not having these negative effects, okay? So we literally create a chemical shift in your brain so that you don't have these negative effects. So in here, what's kind of cool is that there's two main ways for me to enter. There's mind entries and there's body entries. The body entries, I typically use those more for people that are experiencing physical symptoms. And the three most common spots that emotions get trapped in are your shoulder neck area, the low back, and your hips. Those are the top three. But honestly, it could be held anywhere. It could be held in your head. It could be in your finger. It could be anywhere. So that's one way to enter. The other way to enter is a mind entry, and that's for any other issue that you're going through, including physical pain. And you would say these statements like, I'm okay letting go of the pain in my shoulder. Or, I'm okay letting go of my anxiety. I'm okay living life without pain. I'm okay being happy. So whatever it is we're working on, we put it in that statement. Once we say those statements, if we get an incongruent test, what that's showing me is that your subconscious brain, it's not congruent with those statements. And we need to figure out why. Why is your conscious brain and your subconscious brain, why are they not talking on the same page? Okay. So this is a very different technique compared to traditional counseling, where a lot of times they are attacking the brain more psychologically, where I am attacking the brain and body more physiologically, meaning we're going to make an actual chemical change in your system. And people ask me all the time, how many sessions is it going to take? We don't know that. That's all dependent on a lot of different things. How deep is your trauma? And, how easily do you let things go? So sometimes, you know, people on the very first appointment, they'll come in here with some type of pain, and that pain is gone after we release it. They don't have it anymore because all of that pain was actually physically, emotionally connected. And then other people, you know, they get relief, but they want to keep digging at it and finding more and more and more about themselves. So there's really not a standard time of how many times you need to come in, anything like that. It's just more, it's person by person and really how deep the trauma is.
Let me jump in there because I had a patient when Lindsey was here who had a herniated disc in his back. And what we did was we were working on him, and it was a couple of weeks that I was working on him, and he wasn't getting much change. And into the second week, I'm like, you know, you have issues in the tissues. You got a problem. This is an emotional issue that is driving this. And you know, what I'm doing is helps, but you need some emotional work done as well. So it took probably about 3 visits of me constantly telling him, look, you need to go see Lindsey. And he finally went and saw Lindsey, and he came out and he goes, well, that was weird, but I feel better.
If this is the patient that I'm thinking of, I think that he needed to be rolled into our office that day because he couldn't walk. Is this the patient that you're thinking of?
That day in particular, he wasn't. I mean, he was hurting really bad. He was having a hard time walking. I mean, was having a lot of problems walking the whole time.
Yeah, I remember, and we had to bring him in. There was a day, I mean, he was in so much pain and physically.
I don't think he could sit for you, if I remember right.
Right. And so we did the NET, and then he ended up leaving, and it was something very deep from his childhood that was actually stored in his tissues, but something in present day triggered that response. And once we released that, instantaneously that pain went away. So sometimes that happens instantaneously, the pain will go away. And then other times when the pain is there, I always look at this process as a baseball diamond, okay? And, you know, both Dr. Sopcich and I, we look at health as a whole. We're not just treating your symptoms. We want to look at you as a whole, what is going on, and figure out that root problem. So what we do in this room is when somebody comes into me with some sort of physical pain, let's say it's some neck pain here. What I do is, imagine a baseball diamond. We take that pain and we throw that right on the pitcher's mound. And then we do what's called running the bases. So your first base is going to be emotional. Is there any emotional connection that is creating that physical pain? Then we're going to go to second base and test, is there some type of toxin? And toxins are anything that you breathe in or absorb through your skin. And there's thousands and thousands and thousands of them that we're around a day. So even like soap is considered a toxin, shampoo is a toxin, makeup's a toxin, you know, and sometimes those toxins can create a negative effect. And then we look at third base, and that's nutritionally. And sometimes we get too much of a nutrient, or sometimes we don't get enough of a nutrient. That can be creating also some physical pain. So if we run the bases and say none of those things light up for us, then we go to home plate, and that's our structural. We know that something physically is off. So you could also have multiple things wrong with you. You could have, you know, some pain here, but when we run the bases, you might have both an emotion connected to that as well as a toxin. If a toxin shows up in this room, let me grab a bottle real quick. This is our famous ER911. This is homeopathy. We use homeopathy to help clear out the toxin. And we have like 25 different remedies that we could test against your body to see if it works. But this is kind of the go-to. This is for anxiety. This is for all kinds of things. This ER911 is amazing. What I love about these is that there's no side effects to them. I took these like while I was pregnant. I was afraid to take a lot of medicine. I really don't take medicine anyways, but even some vitamins I was a little bit weary about. So this was my go-to all during my pregnancy because there was no side effects to them. And then again, nutritionally, if something shows up there, I test for it in this room, but if it shows up, I refer off to Dr. Sopcich, or if they have a physician or if they have a nutritionist, the patient is already working with one, I kind of write down for them, hey, this is kind of showing up. Can you refer them to a supplement that would have this in it? So I don't really do that part myself because I don't have enough education in that side of it, but I do test for it and I'll refer on. Okay. So yeah, it's pretty neat how it works.
Yeah, so the other thing that I was going to bring up is that when it comes to NET, there's things that you can actually do once you've had some NET done. Lindsey, there's a technique that Lindsey can actually teach you to do. If something comes up at home, you know, a lot of times we like to use tapping. Tapping works really well, but there's also another technique called fast technique that's also a part of the NET. That's just another way to try to help your body to calm itself. And I don't know if you want to touch on that, Linz.
Sure, absolutely. So, you know, NET kind of derived this little technique called the FAST technique, or it's called first aid stress tool. So it's for in these moments where when I'm not around to help you, it's a quick way to touch all of these points at once. And you bring them up to the forehead when we clear, because your forehead points, these are your emotional points on your body. So when you're actually in my office and you're clearing, I will have you connect to a point I found earlier, and then your emotional points, and you're just breathing in and out while focusing on whatever that emotion is that we found. So the FAST technique, I do have to preface this and say that FAST, it is not NET. So we're not allowed to say it's NET, but it's a derivative of it. It is something that can help you right in the moment to kind of calm your nervous system down. So when I use the acupressure points, all right, it's the fatty part of the hand right here on thumb side. That's point 1. Point 2 is right in the fold of the wrist. Point 3 is a finger's length below that. And point 4 is a finger's length below that. So it's kind of like in a line almost. And then what you're going to do, kind of flip your hand around. You're going to press those points. And let's just say you're feeling anxious. You're going to bring your hand to your forehead, contact there while contacting all 4 points, and you're just going to be breathing in and out for about 30 seconds. And you're just focusing on that emotion of anxiety, okay? Then, because you have a different set of points on this side, we have to switch sides. We come back up to the forehead, and you just begin breathing again. And you're just focusing on that emotion of anxiety. So it's a minute total. They used to have you do pressing light and deep, and they changed that. Now it's just really simple. You're just pressing all 4 points, and you can keep repeating the process until you feel much calmer, because it's initiating to the nervous system that you don't need to be in stress. You can be in a calmer state. So I give this a lot to my athletes, like right in the middle of a game or something. Like if a baseball player, you know, strikes out and he's feeling like really anxious about if I'm going to do this again when I'm at bat next, you know, when he's sitting on the bench waiting to come up, you can just sit like this and breathe through those emotions, and no one's really going to know what you're doing. Okay, so you can hide it pretty well. So that it's very quick, but it's the FAST technique.
I was actually just going to ask you about the light and the deep touch. So they did change that. I didn't know they changed it.
Yeah, they made it super simple at this point. So they took out the light and the deep. It's just a contact at this point. And to be honest with you, on the worksheets, they only show these 3 points. They don't show the visceral polarity one, but I teach it because it shows up all the time in people's NETs. I think it's very important. So I teach it with all 4 points.
Yeah, and that point has a couple of fun emotions to it. You can go ahead and tell them those two.
With visceral polarity, with what?
This point right here, typically it's a governing vessel, right?
Yep.
So you're usually going to have feelings of
shame
and false sense of false pride.
Yep. Those are the two.
It's a big area.
It is a big area. That's the area that I look at. It's like a lot of self stuff, a lot of self and not feeling good about yourself, those types of things.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so we break it down into some categories. I can show you this chart. This is kind of a simplified version, but this is a chart that we use in NET. Everything is kind of color coded. It's got the different body parts on here that the emotions are connected with. It also has like the different areas of the spine. So this is something more that Dr. Sopcich, like I would let him know typically if I'm finding, you know, something in his lower back and I say, okay, it's L4, L5, I can relay that to him and say, hey, make sure when you're adjusting somebody, pay special attention to L4, L5, because that keeps showing up that something's going on there. So it's beautiful that we work together, and you can work with a lot of practitioners. I also work with an acupuncturist as well. And so I'll do the same thing. If my patients see the acupuncturist, I'll find a meridian and I'll say, hey, listen, make sure that they really work on your liver meridian, okay? And they're color coded, and they're color coded by elements. So this is all based off the Chinese acupuncture system is what we are using here. So everything in NET is scientifically validated, and they really want to make sure that every step is. So through the years, they have actually taken out some steps and then they put them back in and taken them out, because they want to make sure that every single step in NET has scientific validation behind it. And that was another reason why I really like this technique, because it wasn't just something that was made up. It was something that was researched. There's research behind absolutely every step of this.
Yeah, and speaking of research, the One Foundation is where the research has been done, and they've done some amazing stuff with research. They did a study where they took somebody who had been a bunch of people who had some form of cancer, and what they did was they did this study. They did a functional MRI of their brain, just asking them questions like, you know, what's your name, what's your birthday, where do you live, and then they asked them other questions like, when did you find out that, you know, when you found out, you know, how did they tell you, or things like that. And there was a specific criteria for it. People had to have quite a bit of an emotion attached to it. And then what they did was they did 6 one-hour sessions, I believe it was, if I remember right, of the neuroemotional technique over a period of 6 weeks, once a week for 6 weeks. And when they redid the functional MRI, they actually found that the question where they had, hey, you know, what's your name, had actually more charge to it than the old one, than asking them, you know, how did this happen? When did they tell you? So the researcher, I can't remember his name. He's been on Newsweek or Time Magazine or Newsweek multiple times.
Daniel Monti.
I don't know if you remember his name. Do you?
Daniel Monti.
Okay.
Dr. Monti.
He was one of them. There's another guy that does the functional MRI. Monti was the one that was in charge of it all, but the other guy was the functional med guy, or the functional MRI guy. And that guy had made the comment that he had never ever seen changes that fast and on a functional MRI. In fact, if I can remember, when he was at the seminar, he made the comment that we actually tried to dumb the numbers down because they were so good that people would just say there's no way. Because typically, he said, we might get a 10% change, but they were getting like 50% changes on everybody or more. And it was just unbelievable. So the neuroemotional technique, it's an amazing technique. It's an amazing tool. A lot of times when there is just stuff that it just isn't going away, or you can't get rid of, you know, you check and see if there's an emotion attached to it. And if there is, man, the NET is a great thing to do. Now, here's the thing to remember, though. I think you might have touched on it, but I can't remember. But oftentimes we like to tell people it's like peeling an onion. You know, you might get that layer and it might start making some changes, but oftentimes you got to peel away multiple layers before you can actually get to the root of what the cause is. And then it can just completely change your life. We've had patients who, or I say clients, patients, whatever, who have come in who, for example, they've been through a couple of marriages or a couple of multiple different relationships that just constantly failed and were bad. And doing the neuroemotional work on them, they were able to change themselves to then pick a person who actually wasn't somebody that they were trying to fill into those emotions. I don't know if you want to touch on that or not, but we've seen some huge changes with people.
Absolutely, because this is all about getting to the root and then changing your patterning. So that's something that I do kind of specific in the office, because the NET part kind of brings up the root stuff. But my other training and working with this other practitioner, I work on helping people retrain their brain. So because you're going to come in here and you're going to do all this work and release these things, but we don't want you to keep making the same patterning over and over and over again. We're trying to change that patterning. And I think that's the hardest part of everything I do. The NET is the quick part. That's the easy part. We can bring it up easy in a session. But then to actually change the way that you think and repattern your brain, it typically takes about 90 days or 3 months of doing something consecutively to really ingrain that new pattern into their system. So, we do this all the time. If, like, Doc was saying, we get people all the time. Relationships are such a big issue all the time. I've been through so many different relationships, and I keep attracting the same guy. I keep attracting people that I need to fix. So we look at that concept of, why are you constantly needing to fix these other people? And typically it's something within yourself. It's something that needs to be fixed within you. So then you're attracted to that. Something I want to make really clear, though, is that when we clear things, I do not clear events. Okay, we do not clear the events, because I can go multiple times to the same event. The same event can have multiple emotions attached to it. What we clear is the emotion that is attached to that event. Okay, so I make that really clear. I don't take that memory away from you, but we take the emotion that is connected, that negative emotion that is connected to that, we release that. Okay, so it doesn't feel
to reprogram that emotional charge.
Yep.
So if you guys have questions, feel free to type them in either to the chat box or the question box. And no, it wasn't you I was talking about, Natalie.
That's funny.
But yeah, if you guys have questions, feel free to pop them into the chat box or whatever, and we'll be happy to answer them now. This has been fun. I got to see Lindsey and her husband and her little boy last week, and that was a lot of fun.
Great.
He's a big boy.
That he is.
So nobody's got questions. Anything else you want to talk about on this, Lindsey? Oh, here they come.
We got a couple here.
Lindsey does amazing work. Yes, she does. How can Lindsey be reached? Yes, actually, we were going to get to that. Yep. Lindsey is actually in Willoughby, and she'll tell you how to get a hold of her.
Sure. So the name of my company is called Toadal Positivity, like a toad, Toadal Positivity. And so I'm located right right past downtown Willoughby. I'm in the Willoughby Professional Building. And the best way to get in touch with me is through my website, going to www.toadalpositivity.com. And at the top right corner, there's a button that says Schedule Now. And it'll pull up like a 30-minute NET session, and it will then pull up a calendar, and then it will show the available times. Right now, with our world being so crazy, I have been an extremely busy lady, so we've had so much go on. So my first available right now is in April. So there's so much going on right now.
Is that right? TOADALpositivity.com, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's total because Lindsey loves frogs.
It is, but there's a bigger meaning behind that as well. I'm really big into meditation and connecting that way. And so when I was looking, asking, for a name, I spent a lot of time in this, and it came through my meditation, and I literally heard these words, total positivity. And my husband is very analytical and not into all that stuff. Well, he is now. I'm changing him, but he wasn't into all that. So I called him and I said, oh, what do you think about the name Total Positivity? And he's like, well, what's the spiritual meaning of toad? So I got to read this really quick. It's on the back of my card, but the spiritual meaning of toad is toad spirit brings us into a deeper connection with our feelings, perspectives, and the ability to purge negativity from our lives. Toad cannot endure a toxic environment and challenges us to release all toxic emotions that hold us back in life, such as anger, hatred, and sadness. And I'm like, that is exactly what I do for a living. I mean, how fitting. So that's how I came to be Total Positivity. Plus, I'm also the girl that likes frogs and toads. So it worked out perfect.
So, well, I don't see anything else right now. And I thank you so much, Lindsey, for coming in and hanging with us for the night. Again, it's www.toadalpositivity.com. She is in Willoughby. She works pretty much the same hours I do, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday at different times of the day. So you can get on her website, set up an appointment, and she'll get everything working for you.
Yep. Wonderful.
And Natalie said she's seen her clients, friends, and their families make huge positive changes in their lives with Lindsey's help. Thank you, Natalie.
Thanks, Natalie.
So I hate to have to put these glasses on, but it's too small for me to read. Anyways, you guys all have a great night tonight. God bless. Take care. And thanks for showing up.
Thank you so much. Thanks for showing up.
Good night.